Finally, we are live. Awesome. After all this, wow. God, this network is something else tonight. This is a class we're supposed to have health. The network has held us to ransom. But thank God, finally, we are live. Let's wait for others to join. Okay, I think we are live now and we may get started. It's good to have you all on board. It's another time with Tutor.io, the enthusiastic Tutor. And in today's tutorial, it happens to be the very last revision class for this department. Congratulations. I believe it's our last paper. And what are your thoughts? What are your feedback as regards to the respective paper you have written? Let me know in the comment section. So today our time is fast spent already, so and it's getting late, so I wouldn't want to hold us for too long. But I want us to still achieve a lot in tonight's revision class. All right. So the course is POL312, and it's a lot to do with logic and philosophy alongside politics. So the very first thing I want to talk about is the list of acronyms, which we have ANOVA as analysis of variance. Okay, I think it's the course that has a little bit of statistics in it as well. All right. We also have SOC as social sciences, SDL as standard geonetic logic. All right, that's a little bit to it. So please, for those of us who haven't got any of this course yet, let's ensure to request it after the class tonight. Tutorial.net is the website. You find the WhatsApp button in the top right hand corner. Use that to send us a direct to home and you can get the of this course. So to start with for tonight, we have logic. When you hear of logic, what comes in mind? When we talk about logic, we are talking about the study of laws, all right, of thought or correct reasoning. Logic has to do with reasoning. So the study that involves that process of constructing or reasoning correctly has to do with logic. Logic as a study of the principle, we can see logic as a study of the principle of correct reasoning. So what are the characteristics of logic? All right, logic can be informal. All right, logic can be informal. All right, informal logic studies argument in real world. So logic is informal. It studies logic. All right, it studies this informal logic studies argument in real world. Speaking of natural language. All right, unlike formal logic. All right, formal logic is more of an abstract. All right, it's more of symbolic in system. All right, so we have there's something called a fallacy. A fallacy can be seen as unsound argument. All right, now let's take a step further. Now let's talk about arguments in logic. When you hear of argument in logic, what comes in mind? Now, logic as a case study arose from the concern with correctness of argumentation, right? Now, modern logicians usually wish to ensure that logic studies just those arguments that arise from appropriate general form of inferences. Yes, a good argument is not the argument that possesses validity and soundness, but it also what avoid. So when you talk about argument and logic, it is only fair that your argument is not just valid, but also precise and clear. It doesn't depend on secular, all right? It avoids secular dependencies. So it means that your argument here is very, very clear, all right, logical and precise. So speaking of the history of logic, let's quickly talk about the history. Now, logic, the word logic itself can be traced back to the Greek word logos, originally meaning the word or what is spoken, but coming to mean thought or reason. Okay, I think the network is back now. We're live again. So now, continuity, it says here that the originally the word logic, all right, if we trace the origin, it is traced back to the Greek word logos. And this Greek word means the word, all right, or what is spoken. But coming to me, all right, what is spoken or the word, all right, definitely what is spoken is a thought, all right, definitely what is a thought or reason. Now, in Western world, logic was first developed by Aristotle, who called the subject analytic. Now, Aristotelian logic became widely accepted in science, mathematics, and remained in wide use in West until the early 19th century. Now, one thing we need to pay attention to here is that a hypothetical syllogism, speaking of which now, is a valid deductive argument. All right, and this argument from that uses if then, which is conditional. Speaking of hypothetical syllogism, all right, the use of if then, which is conditional statement. It consists of two conditional premises that, when changed together, lead to a valid if then. All right, conclusion cutting out middle term. The standard form is if P, then Q, if Q, then R. Therefore, if P, then R. If it's cloudy outside, it's either it's about to rain, all right, and if it does rain, then the cloudiness definitely leads to the rain. All right, I don't know if you get that. Now, there's something called scholasticism. For scholasticism, it's a theory, all right, and philosophy, all right, thought in medieval. This before the revolution era, there was a medieval era. All right, so this medieval era now in Europe. Now, let's get straight to things. So now, there's something called semantics of logic. Semantics. My sound. Is it better now? I think it's the microphone. The microphone is the battery is low and it was charged all day though. Can you hear me now, ma? Is it better now? Now, there's something called semantics of logic. Thank you very much for that. The semantic of logic refers to the study of meaning and interpretation within a formal system. All right, the study of meaning and interpretation within a formal system. When we say formal system, now we're talking about you being intentional about observing certain standards. Are we together? Now, there are types of logic. we have the propositional logic, all right, predicate logic, philosophical logic. Now, when we say philosophical logic, it's a branch of logic, all right? Philosophical logic is a branch of philosophy, actually. Now, this branch of philosophy called philosophical logic uses formal logic method to analyze other types of logic. Here we have the philosophical logic, and it is said to be the type of logic that uses what formal logic method to analyze and clarify philosophical concepts. Okay. So let's take this. We have critical thinking. All right. Critical thinking is considered important in academic fields because it enables one to analyze. Critical thinking definitely enables one to analyze, evaluate, and restructure their thinking. Very important. As a philosopher or as a student of philosophy, you need to be a critical thinker. Now let's take this. It says there's something called generalization, and for generalization expresses a relationship between concepts. Now, a generalization is a broad statement, principles, or conclusion drawn from observing, drawn from studying, or analyzing a particular or a specific political event. So we have that. And there are types. Excuse me. So basically there are two forms of generalization. These are hypothesis and laws. For hypothesis, it's just a guess, while law express external and immutable relationship. Are we on the same page? Now let's take a step further. There's something called research paradigm. When we talk of research paradigm, what are we talking about? It is the fundamental framework. Research paradigm is the fundamental framework. All right? Fundamental framework or approach that guides how research is conducted. Are we together? Fundamental framework that guides how research is to be conducted. So we have two major research paradigms are predominant, and they are the positivists. Are we together? The positivist and the interpretative paradigm. So we have that. Now there's a term you must have heard of, which is political inquiry. Alright? It also has a lot, because you are making inquiry. Alright? When we say inquiry, you are gathering data on certain or specific, alright, case study. Approaches to doing this. Okay? Some of the approaches of this political inquiry are the behavioral approach, institutional approach. For behavior now, you share strong sense of dissatisfaction with achievement or conventional political science, especially the historical, philosophical, and descriptive international approaches. Now, the advent of this behavioral approach signals the absorption of scientific method into political science. Now, this behavior approach is intentional about knowing how people behave towards political activities, though, but it's very intentional about not just observing, but it's very intentional about using scientific method, all right, to approach things. All right, and when you use scientific methods to approach things, that means you are out for legit data. So we have that. So there are contemporary methods in political inquiry. When we say contemporary, more recent. All right, and these two main methods are experiment and observation. All right, experiment and observation. So we have that. Now let's take this. There are theories, all right, of concepts. But before then, let's talk about what a concept is. Okay, a concept is a typical association of corresponding representation of language and symbols that makes meaning. Are we together? Now, when we now talk about theories of concepts, one thing you need to understand is that there are prevailing theories in contemporary philosophies which attempt to explain the nature of concept. Now, the representation theory of mind propose that concepts are mental representation, while semantic theory of concepts holds that they are abstract objects. What are we seeing here? When we say theories are out there to help you simplify the setup, right? But even at that, according to what I've been told here, that the representational theory, all right, of mind process that, all right, the representational theory of mind process, speaking of which, that is for the concept of mental representation. What are we talking about here? We're talking about theories of concept. Now, let's take a step further. There's something called model.